You know, there's this assumption we all kind of make when we walk into a corporate boardroom or even just watching a high-level government press conference.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
We assume that if you gather the absolute smartest, most highly educated people in the world, people with sterling resumes, Ivy League degrees, just, off-the-charts IQs, you are guaranteed to get brilliant decisions.
Right, it just makes intuitive sense. You add up to brain power and you get success.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what happens when the best and the brightest use all of that elite, concentrated brain power to lead their organization into an utter, undeniable catastrophe?
It completely shatters that assumption, doesn't it? I mean, it really forces you to realize that extreme intelligence and, elite education, they aren't the safety nets we think they are.
Yeah, not at all.
In fact, if you look closely at history, sometimes those exact traits are the very things that blind a leadership team to reality.
And that paradox is exactly what we are getting into today in this deep dive. We're looking at the source material from David Halberstam's classic book, The Best and the Brightest.
Such a fascinating read.
It really is.
Yeah.
And, we aren't just doing a historical recap of America's involvement in the Vietnam War here. We're looking at this through the lens of modern business and team management.
Right, because the parallels are they're everywhere.
Exactly, because the specific psychological traps these leaders fell into in the 1960s, they are the exact same traps waiting in your office right now, whether you are running a startup or, managing a Fortune 500 team.
So, to really understand how this happened, you kind of have to look at the team president John F. Kennedy assembled in the early 1960s. He didn't want typical politicians. He intentionally sought out this elite brain trust. He recruited the absolute top minds from Harvard, Wall Street, and the highest levels of corporate America.
Yeah, these weren't just political hacks trading favors. We're talking about guys like George Bundy, who was a literal Harvard dean, or Robert McNamara, who came in as Secretary of Defense. And McNamara is a crucial figure here because his background wasn't in military strategy at all.
No, not at all.
He was this brilliant, highly analytical former executive who had essentially helped save the Ford Motor Company. I mean, these were men who were universally recognized as the best of their generation.
What's fascinating here is how that background shaped them. Because they were products of the corporate and academic elite, they shared a very specific mindset.
Which was what, exactly?
Well, they believed fundamentally in purely logical systems and statistical control. McNamara's whole career at Ford was built on the idea that if you have the right data, you can manage literally any massive, complex organization.
He's running by the numbers.
Exactly. So they assumed that because they had succeeded in corporate boardrooms and Ivy League universities, every problem in the world, even a chaotic guerrilla war in Southeast Asia, was essentially just a mathematical or an operational puzzle.
They thought they could just engineer a victory from a desk in Washington, just, optimize the inputs, manage the resources, and output a win.
That was the literal expectation, yeah.
But wait, if McNamara was this legendary analytical data genius at Ford Motor Company, shouldn't he have been the absolute first person to spot that the data coming out of Vietnam was, garbage?
Yeah.
How does a data genius fall for bad data?
Well, that's because of how the data was gathered and, more importantly, how it was incentivized. Let's break down the mechanics of it.
Okay.
In a conventional war, like World War II, you measure success by front lines moving on a map, right?
Yep.
You capture a city, you cross a river, you're winning.
Simple enough.
But Vietnam was a guerrilla war. There were no front lines. So the leadership in Washington, they needed a new metric to, quote unquote, prove their corporate style efficiency model was working.
Right. They needed something to put on the spreadsheet.
Exactly. So they decided to measure success through things like body counts and kill ratios.
Which, I mean, that just sounds completely dystopian. But in a spreadsheet-obsessed culture, you measure whatever you can count, I guess.
You really do.
Yeah.
But here is the mechanism of the failure. When you tell military officers whose careers depend entirely on showing progress that their only metric for success is the number of enemy bodies, you completely warp their incentives.
Oh, sure.
An officer in the field knows things are going badly, but nobody wants to send a report to the brilliant Robert McNamara saying, hey, we are losing.
Because then you're the guy who failed the genius.
Right. So what happens? The definition of an enemy combatant gets very loose. Civilians get counted. Estimates get wildly exaggerated. The system punished failure, so the system simply stopped reporting failure.
Okay, let's unpack this because this is the ultimate example of a metric becoming the mission. It sounds exactly like a modern tech company that gets absolutely obsessed with a vanity metric.
Oh, 100%.
Like, let's say an executive team wants to keep the board of directors happy, right? So they hyper-focus on something like time spent on app or total user clicks.
Just looking for those numbers to go up.
Yeah, they point to these charts going up and to the right, telling everyone they are just crushing it. Meanwhile, the only reason users are spending time on the app is because the loading screen is broken, and they can't figure out how to cancel their subscriptions.
That is a brilliant comparison.
The metric looks fantastic, but the reality is the product is completely broken.
And that's a direct challenge to anyone listening to this right now. Think about the KPIs or the metrics in your own workplace. When the hard data on the ground doesn't match the desired reality of the executive team, what happens?
Yeah, what really happens behind closed doors?
How often are spreadsheets quietly adjusted? How often is vital negative context just stripped away from a presentation so someone can hand a clean, easily digestible win to the CEO?
I mean, I've seen it happen. You massage the slide deck because you know the boss only wants to see green arrows, not red ones.
We all have.
But the terrifying thing about Halberstam's analysis in the source material